With the 2021-2022 NBA season coming up very soon, I decided now is as good of a time as any to start discussing every single team before the season starts. Decided it made the most sense to go in the order from the worst to the best teams in the NBA, kind of like my own predictions for this upcoming season. And right now I'm at the number 6 spot, and at the number 6 spot I have the Atlanta Hawks, meaning I think the Atlanta Hawks will be the 6th best team in the NBA this upcoming season. Basically, in today's video, I'll be discussing the Atlanta Hawks, how good I think they will do this season, how good I think the individual players will do, things like that. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content. Also, if you want to help me reach my goal of 2,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro. But quickly before we get into the video, I gotta show you this really quickly. This is the new Diversion water bottle. It's basically a water bottle where you can put stuff like your keys, wallet, and other kind of small items like in your water bottle that will make you lose it way less. And it will also just help you to not have your pockets full and things like that. Click the link in my bio if you're interested, and into the video. When it comes to the offensive side of the floor, I think we all know how good the Hawks are going to be. Last season they were a top 10 offense in the NBA, and this was actually with them having significant injuries to a lot of their top players. This offseason they didn't really lose any of their top guys, so I think it's pretty safe to say that the Hawks will be a top 5 offense in the league, at worst like a top 10 offense. When you have a guy who's as talented as Trae Young when it comes to playmaking and attacking the defense, combined with the crazy amount of elite three-point shooters they have, this is definitely a team that I think will be an elite offense. Trae Young honestly has the potential to be a top 10 player in the league, maybe even a top 5 player in the league. But if I'm being honest, I don't think he's going to take that next step this season. I honestly expect Trae to play similar to how he did last season. I don't think he's going to get any worse, but I do think he'll make some small improvements, like maybe he's going to shoot better from 3, or maybe just be more efficient overall. Maybe he'll cut down on turnovers, things like that. But I don't think Trae's going to take a crazy huge leap in like his player rankings or anything like that. Then we all know how good Trae is. He might even be in the MVP conversation. But yeah, next we got to talk about John Collins, who the Hawks gave a pretty huge contract to this offseason. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not the biggest fan of that contract, since Collins, despite what many people believe, didn't really go crazy in the playoffs. I don't know why a lot of people are acting like he went crazy in the playoffs. He didn't necessarily do bad, but he wasn't outstanding or anything like that. And he didn't even have an outstanding regular season. His numbers actually got worse in the playoffs. And yeah, I know he showed that he could be a pretty good defender, but nonetheless, I don't think he's a player who is needed on their team. He's a solid fit, but he's also not the greatest fit in the world. But nonetheless, I think Collins is a solid player. I'm not like a John Collins hater or anything like that. I still think there's a chance he can improve since he's like 25 years old. And I think if he can improve his 3-point range and improve his post game, he could be a 16 to 18 point scorer, maybe even be a legit 20-point scorer. He would just have to be featured more in the offense and just be more aggressive. Nonetheless, I think Collins is a solid player. Maybe he could even be an all-star player. Don't get it twisted. I just don't think the Hawks should have gave him a contract. Next, I want to talk about DeAndre Hunter, who underratedly was on pace to have a great sophomore season before he got injured. He was actually a legit 16-point scorer on really good efficiency. I honestly think this next season he's going to take a next leap to be in somewhere around like an 18 to maybe even 20-point scorer. I think he's going to solidify himself as this team's second best player. He's just a player who has the ability to be one of the best defenders in the NBA, along with being the guy who can just play off the ball, create his own shot, not at an elite level, but at a decent level, especially from the mid-range area, as he's actually one of the better mid-range shooters in the league. I think he might even take that leap and be in conversation for the Most Improved Player award. I really like DeAndre Hunter. But next, we for sure got to talk about Cam Reddish, who a lot of people have been disappointed by so far in his career, but a lot of people, including myself, still thinks he has like the potential to be a star player in the league. And I think this is the season where he's going to start to show some signs of what level of player he can be. He just needs to stay healthy and just be more consistent, because some nights he looks like he's truly going to be a star, and some nights he even looks like the 3rd or 4th best player on his team, and some nights he looks like a terrible player and you question to why he's even playing. But to be honest, I'm expecting Cam to play way better than he did last season, and I think he's going to be more efficient. And even at the end of the playoffs and stuff, we were seeing him play way better. He was showing how good he can be, as he had multiple games hitting a bunch of threes. To be honest, I think he's going to be really good, but I guess we'll have to see, because you never know with Cam Reddish. To talk about some of the other players who I didn't really feel like talking about for a long time, they got Clint Capella, who's one of the best defensive centers in the league. I think he's just going to continue to do what he's been doing the last 3 years. I don't think he's going to get worse or better. They have Kevin Huerter, who's probably the most underrated player on this team. He's actually one of the best shooters in the league. Then there's a chance he could improve because he's still young. Bogdanovic is a great shooter and can occasionally make plays for others with Trae Young off the floor. He's also one of the better players on this team when it comes to handling the ball, so he's very important to this team. Lou Williams is one of the best bench players in the league. I think he really fits this team, especially when Trae's not on the court. Danilo Gallinari really showed out for this team last year in the playoffs, and I think there's a chance he could be a little bit worse because of his age, but nonetheless, he's still one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and when you consider the fact that he's a 4, it's really big for them. He's also a guy who hits really difficult shots. You also want to talk about their rookies in Sharif Cooper and Jalen Johnson, who I think were 2 steals in the draft. In the case of Sharif, I don't know how much minutes he's going to get, since this is a team with plenty of good guards, and Sharif is just a rookie, and a lot of times rookies don't get a lot of consistent minutes no matter how popular you are. But I think there's a chance Sharif could potentially carve out a role for himself on the team if injuries happen or things like that. Obviously, I'm not hoping that happens, but that's a legit scare. I honestly think he'll at least get a chance to show what he can do. When it comes to Jalen Johnson, he's a pretty solid defender, so maybe he could carve out a role. But to be honest, I also want to talk about Onyeka Okongwu, who has been kind of forgotten about in his draft class, but in the playoffs he took a lot of the right steps and showed to be a great defender. I think he even had that one game where he was playing really good defense on Giannis, things like that. I think he's going to carve out a role on this team as the full-time backup 5 or something like that. I think he's going to be a really good modern day center in the future, but nonetheless, Atlanta will for sure be one of the best offenses in the league. They just have so much guys who can just go off on any given night, and so much elite shooters, and they have a guy in Trae Young who's an offensive superstar. This team's going to be really good, man. I think they have an offense that might even rival the Brooklyn Nets, especially when you realize that they're going to be without Kyrie. When it comes to the defensive side of the floor, I definitely don't think the Hawks will be as good on defense as they're on offense. To be honest, a lot of people think they're a bad defense, but to be honest, at times in the playoffs, their defense looked elite, especially against the Bucks. To be honest, after they got Lloyd Pierce, they actually looked pretty good on defense. I'm not going to go out and say this team's going to be a top 10 defense in the league, but I do think this is a roster capable of ranking somewhere around the 10 to 15 spot on the defensive side of the floor. I think they'll be a slightly above average defense. You combine that with their great offense, I think that's one of the better teams in the Basketball Association. This is also just a team with a lot of really good defenders. As John Collins showed in the playoffs, he's a good defender. DeAndre Hunter has the potential to be one of the best defenders in the NBA, and I think he's going to do that next season. Clint Capella is one of the best defensive centers in the NBA because he's able to switch better than most centers, and he's a really good rim protector. And Onyeka Okongwu was a really good defensive center as their backup, as well as a guy like Cam Reddish has the ability to be a really good defender, and he showed that a lot in his rookie season and last year. To be honest, I think they have a lot of solid defenders. Let me not forget Trae Young, who's actually one of the worst defenders in the NBA, and if you look at some statistics, he's actually the worst defender in the NBA. But even though they have him, I think they have enough solid defenders surrounding him to be still a good defense. But nonetheless, this is a team that's going to be solid on defense, but not great or amazing. To answer the question of why the Hawks are number 6 on my list, I'm not gonna lie, maybe I'm ranking them a little bit too high, because I don't think most people will rank the Hawks this high, but they just really impressed me last season with their postseason play, and I think it's time that they're taken very seriously. This is an offense that's very hard to stop because they have so much guys who just go off on any given night. It makes them very unpredictable, and I think that really helps them out in the postseason. I think the Hawks are in the tier of teams that are dark horse contenders, meaning I never predict them to win the NBA championship, but I do think in the right scenario with injuries, things like that, maybe they get a perfect matchup, maybe another team gets upsetted, something like that, they definitely could win the championship or maybe make the NBA finals. I think they have a not a horrible chance to defeat the Brooklyn Nets, especially with the whole Kyrie Irving situation and the fact that they have just as good of not just as good of offense. Let me relax. But they like have an offense that can maybe compete with the Brooklyn Nets, and they actually showed a defense that was decently good enough to guard the Bucks. So maybe they could surprise everyone again. I'm not gonna like predict that stuff, but nonetheless, I think the Hawks are definitely a legit team. If you're wondering why they're not top 5 to me, I simply don't think they're in the tier of teams like the Lakers, Warriors, Bucks, Nets, or Suns. There's not really much to say. I just don't think they're as good of those teams. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you think the Hawks are big title contenders. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to help me reach 3,000 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I respond to most of my comments. And I'm out.